Okay, so this story is Frog in Winter by Max Valethus. When Frog got up one morning, he realized at once that something was wrong with the world. Something had changed. He went to the window and was astonished to see that everything was completely white. He rushed outside in confusion. There was snow everywhere. It was slippery under his feet. Suddenly he felt himself falling backwards down the bank into a river. But the river was frozen and the frog lay on his back on cold, hard ice. If there's no water, I won't be able to wash, he thought, shocked. Shivering with cold, he sat on the bank. Then Duck came hurrying towards him on her skates. "Hello, Frog," she said. "Nice weather today. Are you coming skating?" "No, I'm freezing," replied Frog. "But skating is good for you," said Duck. "I'll teach you." So Duck gave Frog her skates and scarf, and she pushed him, and he slid quickly across the ice, but not for long. Soon he fell. "Aren't you enjoying yourself?" said Duck. But Frog was nearly frozen, and his teeth was chattering. "You got a warm, feathery coat, but I'm just a bare frog," he said. "You're right," said Duck. "You better keep my scarf, as I must be on my way." Then Pig appeared with a blanket of firewood on his back. "Aren't you freezin', Pig?" asked Frog. "Freezin'," said Pig. "No, I'm enjoying the fresh, healthy air. Winter is the most beautiful season." "You have a nice layer of fat to keep you warm, but what do I have?" "Poor Frog," thought Pig. "I wish I could help him." 1, 2, 1, 2. Hare ran up. He was jogging in the snow. "Hurrah!" he called joyously. "Sport makes you healthy. Hurrah for the sport! 3 cheers for the sport!" "Why don't you join me in, Frog? It's great fun keeping fit." "I'm freezing," said Frog. "You've got warm fur, but I have nothing." Sadly he went home. The next day his friends invited him to have a snowball fight, but Frog couldn't join in the fun. "I'm freezing," he murmured. "I'm only a bare frog," said miserably. He stumbled on home. He sat next to the fire for the rest of the day, dreaming of spring and summer. He burned every last piece of wood. When the fire went out, he went outside to gather his logs, but he couldn't find any wood in the snow. He walked and walked until he lost his way. Everything was white. Exhausted, he lay down in the snow, a bare frog, and there his friends found him. "I'm freezing," whispered Frog. "Come on," said Hare, and carefully they carried him back home and put him to bed. Hare collected wood and it lit a fire. Pig cooked a nourishing soup, and Duck cheered up the Frog. In the evenings everyone listened while Hare read wonderful stories about spring and summer. Meanwhile Pig knitted Frog a warm pullover in 2 colors, and Frog enjoyed the attention from his friends. Winter is colorful when you spend it in bed. Then the next day came when Frog was well enough to get up, without fur, fat, or feathers, but dressed in a new pullover. He took his first steps in the snow. "Well?" asked the Hare curiously. "It's good," answered Frog bravely. So the long winter passed, but one morning when Frog opened his eyes, he noticed at once that something was different. Bright light streamed in the window. Quickly he jumped out of bed and ran outside. The world was bright green and the sun shone in the sky. "Hooray!" he cried. "It's back. It's good to be a frog. How wonderful! I can feel the sun's rays on my bare back." His friends were happy to see the frog so cheerful. "What would we do without Frog?" laughed Hare. "I can't think," said Pig. "No," agreed Duck. "Life would not be the same without him." Okay. I'm going to try and read this next story to you. It's Russell Hoban, The Mole Family Christmas, illustrated by Lillian Hoban. Harley Mole and his son Delver did straight mole work. They tunneled and they dug and they brought home groceries. Harley and Delver wore overalls and thick boots and heavy work gloves. They wore thick glasses because the whole mole family was very nearsighted, and they had very little lanterns in their caps because they tunneled in the dark. They tunneled in the springtime and the summer. They tunneled through the autumn, through the winter, while Harley's wife Emma cooked and cleaned and washed their overalls. All three of them worked every single day, and all days were very same for them. In the evening, Emma mended the overalls and work gloves, while Harley and Delver cleaned the lanterns and scraped the mud from their boots and rubbed them down with tallow. When Delver's chores were done, he polished up and sorted his collection of good-shaped stones and marbles and bits of colored glass that he found while tunneling, and sometimes he just sat around and thought. "Delver is a brooder," Emma used to say to Harley. "Delver is a thinker," Harley always answered. "There's no telling what that boy might do when he puts his mind to something." The Mole family home was under a lawn of a house that had been empty for a long time, but that autumn a family of people moved in, and winter very carefully one morning when everyone was asleep. Delver tunneled up through the earth the snow had to look round, and at the back door of the house he found a house mouse looking at a calendar where the milkman had left, with a season's greetings from the dairy. "Christmas is coming," said the mouse, and ran into his hole. Delver thought about it all, and that day, and at dinner he asked his mother and father, "What is Christmas?" "I have no idea," said Harley. "No idea whatever." "Neither do I," said Emma. "Perhaps it's a people thing." Delver thought about it some more, and that evening when his chores were done, he went up to the people house. There he found the mouse again, dining on bird seed that had fallen from a feeder. "What is Christmas?" Delver asked him. "Several different flavors of paper and cardboard," said Mouse. "Fresh paste sometimes, and no end of ribbon string nesting materials, constant footsteps overhead, and no rest for anyone who has come and gone." "Until who's come and gone, Delver?" "Fat man in red suit," said Mouse. "White beard. First there's a lot of stomping, snorting, jingling up on the roof. Then he comes puffing and wheezing down the chimney, puts knick-knacks and candy and stockings, leaves all kind of packages around, says ho, 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 and goes huffing, puffing up the chimney again. It's quite an odd thing, but he only does it once a year, and nobody seems to mind." "What's in the packages?" said Delver. "Skates, trains, dolls, what not," said the mouse. "The children write letters, and if they've been good, the fat man brings them what they ask for." "Does he bring you anything?" asked Delver. "No," said the mouse. "But then it's not my chimney, and I don't write letters. It's late," he said. "I've got to get home before the Ephraim owl comes by the evening rounds. Lovely night, isn't it? Look at all those stars." "Where?" said Delver. "Up in the sky," said the mouse. "Where else?" He shook his head and ran back into the house. Delver looked up, but he was far too nearsighted to see the stars, when the brightness here and there, but that was all. He was squinting up at the sky when a lady mouse came to nibble at the bird seed. "The stars are especially fine tonight, aren't they?" she said. "They certainly are," said Delver. "Indeed," said Lady Mouse, "it's almost like they're singing. You might say the way they glimmer and shine, isn't it?" "Yes, Delver, I think it is." And he went on squinting while the Lady Mouse went on nibbling. After a while Delver said, "Do you have any particular way of looking at the stars?" "I just look up," said the Lady Mouse. "Of course I have seen people looking at them with telescopes, which is, I suppose, a particular way of looking out." Look out," she cried, and dived into the shrubbery, pulling Delver with her as an old Ephraim owl swooped down after them. "Hoo, hoo," said Ephraim, as he flew with nothing in his talons. "If not this time, then some other time," and he flew away hooting and chuckling. "You better keep your eyes open," said the Lady Mouse to Delver. "He almost caught you." "I was thinking," said Delver. "What's a telescope?" "I believe what a telescope is like an extra far-sighted," said Lady Mouse, "which would undoubtedly be helpful to anyone who might not be somewhat nearsighted." "Undoubtedly," said Delver. "Thank you very much. Good night." He tunneled slowly home, thinking about the stars. The next day, as Delver worked with his father, he thought about the stars, and he could not see. After a while, he began to cry. "What's the matter, Harley?" Delver told him about the stars. "I went above ground a time or two when I was young," said Harley. "I heard about the stars, too. I know how you feel." "There are telescopes," said Delver, and he told his father what the Lady Mouse had told him. "I wish I had a telescope," said Delver. "So do I," said Harley. "It'd be nice to see a few stars just for the experience, you know." "Maybe if we had a chimney," said Delver, and he told Harley about the fat man in the red suit. "Ah," said Harley, "but that's the people thing. I never heard of a red-suited fat man giving anything to animals, and anyhow, we haven't got a chimney," said Delver. "We've got a stovepipe," said Harley, "and same as any other animal, you got to have a chimney," said Delver. "A people-sized chimney?" asked Harley. "Well," said Delver, "it would be nice to have a big enough one for his hand with a telescope at least." "All right," said Harley. We'll take a deep breath at drawing himself up to full height. "We'll make a chimney." When Emma was told about the project, she had so many doubts. "I'd like to see the stars as much as anyone," she said, "but we must not raise our hopes too high." Nevertheless, she threw herself wholeheartedly into the work. The Mole family made many night-time trips above ground for the sand and cement of the motor, and Harley and Emma and Delver carried pieces of broken brick and heavy stones, always watching and listening for the owl. Old Ephraim failed to catch them at night after night, but vowed that he would sooner than later dine upon them. "The longer it takes," he said, "the better you'll taste." But the moles kept working on their chimney in spite of Ephraim. Every night it grew higher. The mouse who had told Delver about the chimney showed him how to spell out the words for his letter. By the time the chimney was half built, he was ready to mail it. The question was, where to? "I know he comes down," said the mouse, "so he must come down. He must come from up. If I were you, I'd send the letter up." So the moles found a very long stick and stuck it straight up in the snow, with a letter in the cleft at the end of it. The letter said, "To the fat man in the red suit. All of us moles down here have been good. We need a telescope so we can look at the stars. Maybe you don't give things to animals. Well, then I would swoop my stone, marble, and glass collection for it. If I didn't have enough, my father could work out different tunnels, plain digging, if you need any empty tunnels or plain digging done. Your friend Delver the Mole." That night the moles stopped work before old Ephraim made his rounds, and they were back in bed when he passed overhead on silent wings. Old Ephraim saw the letter on the stick, snatched it up in his talons, stuck it in his back pocket, and flew away with it. When the moles came out the next night, they saw the letter was gone and were pleased. "Well," said Delver, "now that it's been picked up, it's just a matter of time till a telescope comes." Then the moles worked very hard every night to finish their chimney. All of them hoped very much that the fat man in red suit would come, but each of them thought that perhaps he might not come. So just to make sure that Delver and Harley would have something for Christmas, Emma knitted new mufflers for them, and Harley made a pair of pretty slippers for Emma and a pair of moccasins for Delver. Delver made a sewing box for his mother, a reading lamp with green ginger ale bottle glass shade for his father. Then all the moles wrapped their presents and hid them. "Even if the fat man didn't bring the telescope," said Emma to Harley and Delver, "he may leave some other little presents for you, you know." "Just what I was thinking," said Harley. "So was I," said Delver, and all three of them smiled to themselves. When the moles finished the chimney by the light of the moon on Christmas Eve, they were all exhausted. They sat on top of their chimney and sighed happily, smiling up at the stars they could not see, and they were so tired that they all fell asleep sitting there in a row. They were sitting there asleep when old Ephraim flew over. "Hoo, hoo," said Ephraim. "They were all just like a 3-course dinner, all ready and waiting for me. I'll just swoop down and they'll jump up and run, but they won't even be fast enough." Ephraim swooped down, but the tired moles stayed fast asleep. "This doesn't seem quite right," said Ephraim, and he flew up again. "I'll hoot very loudly and count to 10, give them a head start, and then I'll catch them." "Hoo," he hooted, "wake up," but the moles would not wake up. "Silly things," said Ephraim. "They write letters about telescopes and stars and sleep out in the open by the night of the moon. They certainly deserve to be eaten." Just then the midnight bells rang out in all the churches in the town, and the sound floated on the air, sparkling snow from the high up, and under the singing of the stars there came a faint jingling of sleigh bells, and all at once old Ephraim felt very jolly and full of fun. "Wouldn't those moles feel foolish if they woke up and found themselves not eaten?" he chuckled. "Then maybe for fun I'll give the letter to whoever's on the way up there in the sleigh. Maybe he knows a fat man in a red suit." So it was that on that Christmas morning the moles woke up feeling very foolish for having fallen asleep out in the open and found themselves not eaten. And there beside them on the chimney was a beautiful shining telescope. "You see," said Delver, "all it took was a chimney. I didn't even have to swap my stone, marble, and glass collection." But the joke wasn't only on the moles, because when old Ephraim woke up the next morning he found a nicely wrapped package outside the door of the hollow tree where he lived. Inside the package was an elegant striped necktie, and the cards on the suit said, "Season's greeting to a jolly good fellow from the fat man in the red suit. Best regards, S. Claus." So that was the Mole family's first Christmas, and they were very pleased with it. On top of the Christmas they made an owl-proof observatory out of an upside-down flower pot, and then they were able to look out in the stars in perfect comfort. I think Delver did very well to find out that Christmas as he did, said Emma. Yes, said Harley, you can never tell what will happen when a boy like Delver puts his mind to something. Here am I, who never expected a single star. Looking at all of them, I call that impressive. It really is like singing the way they glimmer and shine, said Delver. Even Delver's mouse friends, who were not nearsighted, found that they enjoyed viewing the stars through the telescope, and they visited the mole's observatory often. Old Ephraim wears his necktie constantly. Although he hunts for the moles regularly, he has not managed to catch them. There has been talk of using the mole's chimney next Christmas for all the local animals, and the mice are already at work on their letters to a fat man in a red suit. So is old Ephraim, who, being somewhat more knowledgeable, will address his letter to S. Claus. And we'll stop there for tonight. We got both stories in. I'm impressed. We have just a little bit left to go of this wonderful book. Thank you for sharing it with me. I hope you're keeping your social distance. I hope you're wearing your mask, washing your hands. When you can't, use your hand sanitizer. God bless. Love each and every one of you. Till tomorrow.